Have you ever thought about what it means to be forgotten? For one little boy, this wasn't just a thought, it was his reality for over 65 years. His gravestone bore a question: Heavenly Father, bless this unknown boy. The story starts with a cardboard box, left in a wooded area on the outskirts of Philadelphia. The case of the boy in the box is a puzzle with pieces that never quite fit together. It began on a cold day in February 1957, a time of poodle skirts and burgeoning rock and roll. But in a quiet, overgrown lot, something was terribly wrong. The discovery of the boy set in motion one of the longest cold cases in American history. Imagine the scene: a young man checking on his muskrat traps. He saw a large cardboard box, the kind that might have held a new bassinet. Curiosity got the better of him, and he looked inside. What he saw would stay with him forever. This isn't just a story about a crime, it's about a city's promise to a nameless child. Investigators dedicated their careers to finding answers. Everyday people, amateur sleuths, spent their own time and money trying to give him back his name. They became guardians of his memory. And for decades they all asked the same question: who was this little boy, and why did no one seem to be looking for him? The question was carved into his tombstone. It was February 25, 1957, on Susquehanna Road in Fox Chase, Philadelphia. A young man named Frederick Benonis stumbled upon the scene while checking his traps. He saw the box but left it alone. Days later, college student Frank Guthrum saw the box and stopped. He saw a small hand, a foot, and knew he had to call the police. When officers arrived, the scene was quiet, almost peaceful. Inside the box was the naked body of a small boy, bruised, with crudely cut blonde hair. Who would do this to a child? And who was he? There were no reports of a missing boy matching his description. The box offered few clues, frustratingly vague. It was a J.C. Penney box, originally containing a baby's bassinet. The boy was wrapped in a distinctive flannel blanket. The scene was a paradox: intimate items surrounding an anonymous child. The medical examiner, Dr. Joseph Spellman, found the boy malnourished with surgical-type scars. His hands and feet were clean, suggesting he hadn't been outside recently. The cause of death was blunt force trauma. The investigation had begun, but the trail was already cold. The boy's life was one of neglect and abuse, ending in a lonely wood. The clues were like ghosts, present but offering no solid leads. It was a maddening, circular investigation. The boy was small for his age, weighing only about 30 pounds. His teeth were in good condition, suggesting some care. But the evidence of abuse and neglect was undeniable. The contradictions created a portrait of a life that made no sense. The Philadelphia Police Department was determined to identify this child. They took post-mortem photographs, hoping someone would recognize him. Flyers went up all over the city and beyond. America's unknown child, they called him. Thousands of tips poured in, but each led to a dead end. It was as if the boy had lived in a vacuum, invisible to the world. Investigators looked closely at the few physical clues. The blanket was traced back to its manufacturer but was a common item. The J.C. Penney box was sold in stores up and down the East Coast. The clues were present but offered no solid leads. The boy's physical condition was small for his age, with surgical-type scars. His teeth were in good condition, suggesting some care, but the evidence of abuse and neglect was undeniable. It was a confusing mix of care and cruelty. Had he been held captive? Was he part of a family living off the grid? The contradictions piled up, creating a portrait of a life that made no sense. The more they learned, the less they seemed to know. The investigation was maddening, circular, and frustrating. The boy's life was one of neglect and abuse, ending in a lonely wood. The clues were like ghosts, present but offering no solid leads. It was a maddening, circular investigation. As weeks passed, Philadelphia adopted the unknown boy as its own. The case struck a deep chord with the public. How could a child vanish without a trace? The story was a constant feature in local papers. The police department was inundated with calls and theories. It became more than just a case. It was a cause. Investigators like Remington Bristow became obsessed. He dedicated his life to solving the mystery. Even after retirement, he couldn't let it go. The city decided the boy deserved a proper burial. A funeral was held and he was laid to rest in a potter's field. His headstone read, "Heavenly Father, bless this unknown boy." Over the years, the boy's story became Philadelphia folklore. The boy in the box became a symbol of innocence lost and a community's enduring hope for justice. In the absence of facts, speculation filled the void. Theories about the boy in the box were varied and plentiful. One theory centered on a foster home near the discovery site. The boy was thought to be the illegitimate child of the man's stepdaughter. Remington Bristow pursued this theory for years. He found a bassinet and blankets similar to those in the box. Another theory suggested the boy's parents were carnival workers. This could explain why no one noticed he was missing. Darker theories whispered of cults or refugees. Each theory dissolved under scrutiny, leaving investigators with a nameless boy and a box full of questions. In 2002, a new lead emerged. A woman, known as M, claimed her abusive mother purchased the boy in 1954. She said his name was Jonathan, and described horrific abuse. M's story lined up with evidence from 1957. She claimed they dumped the boy's body in Fox Chase. Her account was compelling, and police were cautiously optimistic. However, M had a history of mental illness, raising questions about her reliability. There was no independent evidence to corroborate her story. Police couldn't find records of a Jonathan fitting the profile. Despite initial promise, the lead fizzled out. M's story was deemed not credible. It was another false dawn in a case full of them. The identity of the boy in the box remained a secret. The investigation continued, but the trail was cold. The boy's life was one of neglect and abuse, ending in a lonely wood. As the 20th century gave way to the 21st, the boy in the box case became a touchstone for the true crime community. The internet created a new public square for amateur detectives. Websites and forums dedicated to the case sprang up. The boy's story became a global mystery, kept alive by online sleuths. These amateur investigators brought fresh eyes and dedication to the case. They digitized old articles, created timelines, and cross-referenced databases. In 1998, the boy's body was exhumed for DNA extraction. The DNA profile could be compared against databases. The boy was reburied in Ivy Hill Cemetery with a new headstone. The hope that DNA would provide a quick answer faded. Forensic genealogy became the last best hope. It involved using DNA to find distant relatives and build family trees. It was a long shot, but it was the last best hope. The investigation continued, but the trail was cold. The boy's life was one of neglect and abuse, ending in a lonely wood. For 65 years, he was a ghost. But in December 2022, the impossible happened. The Philadelphia Police Department announced they had identified the boy in the box. His name was Joseph Augustus Zarelli. He was born on January 13, 1953. The breakthrough came from forensic genealogy. Using DNA, genealogists built a vast family tree. They identified a potential birth mother and confirmed it. Joseph Augustus Zarelli. The identification answered the biggest question but opened new ones. Joseph had a father and mother who were both deceased. He also had living siblings. The investigation focused on what happened during his short life. The family's name was not released to protect their privacy. The case was still an active homicide investigation. Learning his name changed everything. He was no longer an abstract symbol of a cold case. He was Joseph, a little boy who had lived. The news brought a sense of closure but also profound sadness. The question on his original headstone had finally been answered. Today, if you visit Ivy Hill Cemetery, you will find a headstone with the name Joseph Augustus Zarelli. Seeing the name etched in stone is a powerful experience. It's the final act of a promise kept. They gave him back his identity, the most fundamental thing a person can have. The case of Joseph Augustus Zarelli is a story about the enduring power of memory. It shows how a mystery can capture the public imagination for generations. The investigators, internet sleuths, and genealogists all became part of his story. But the story isn't over. Identifying Joseph was a monumental achievement, but it is not the same as justice. The question of who has been answered, but the questions of how and why remain. Who was responsible for the abuse he suffered? With his parents deceased, the chances of prosecution are slim, but the police are still investigating. They want to give him not just a name, but the full truth. The mystery of the boy in the box has transformed. It's about the life and death of Joseph Augustus Zarelli. It's a story that serves as a powerful lesson in persistence. It tells us that no case is ever truly cold. Joseph, his name was Joseph.